Reading manhwa is a lot like reading manga. Sometimes it can be the most divine, soul-shattering, nut-busting experience that you could ever imagine. Most of the time, it's hot garbage. Some might even say, doo-doo water. With the beginning of the second part of the first season of the solo leveling anime upon us and many, many more manhwa getting adaptations, I think that I could get you guys ahead of the curve and suggest 5 manhwa which, if given proper adaptations, would take the anime industry by storm. Our first story is an isekai. No, wait, hear me out. The main character isn't hit by a truck, he's hotboxed into a waiting room. Ryu Hanbin is just an ordinary guy when he's put into a dark abyss with tons of other people at the mercy of a bunch of game devs who give them these guidelines, these video game HUDs, and ship them off into their classic fantasy world. Except something goes wrong with Hanbin's guideline. When he's sent to the starting area where they're supposed to leave when they hit level 5, when he does it, it just resets him back to level 1 with all of his stats intact. This is where the overpowered gimmick is, right? Maybe he'll just keep farming low-level enemies for a while until it becomes a weapon of mass destruction, right? This is fucking awesome. Except, the enemies don't stay low-leveled. They grow as he grows. No matter how skilled he gets, no matter how big his stats become, his life never becomes easier. His enemies never become non-threatening, his skill list never grows any longer, and he's always fighting for his life. It goes on for a year, 2 years, 5 years, a decade. He grows strong enough to take a Kamehameha to the face, but his mind is starting to fold under the constant stress of just surviving. Eventually, he stops counting the years and resigns himself to living and dying on this mountain when he's suddenly in the fantasy world. The series at heart is about adventure. It's about exploring this brand new fantasy world which is familiar and at the same time really fresh. Our protagonist is always in a state of conflict with the world around him because just his existence is a crime. Because of some stuff in the past, otherworlders are hunted down and he has to find a way back to Earth while keeping his identity a secret. Kinda hard to do that when you're the equivalent of an elephant in a nursery. Hanbin is constantly having to deal with threats in creative and oftentimes very explosive ways to cover up being from Earth, and sometimes he doesn't get away with it, and the consequences are severe for him and those around him. Besides the adventure, it also focuses heavily on action and it does it extremely well. It leans into that One Punch Man slapstick of just hitting things really hard until they die, and if they can't be hurt by physical attacks, just hit them harder. For example, this lich that Hanbin encounters just reforms every time he breaks him, so what can he do? Well, just grind his bones to dust on his sword. That should work. The fights are top tier and the characters are extremely interesting. If you're interested on a fresh take on isekai, give this one a shot. If you've watched Konosuba, you know that the main appeal of the anime is the dipshittery of the 4 main characters. How they insult each other, how they riff off each other, how they just fuck around with each other. Now imagine all of that goblin energy, all of that slime ball aura, and focus it into just one person. That is the main character of the Greatest Estate developer. The story is another isekai, where the main character is nearly overworked to death, and he's landed in the body of a good-for-nothing noble in a fantasy world. In fact, he is so good for nothing that everyone thinks that the kindest thing he can do is insult them to their face and break their furniture, and he has to work for the trust of the people around him in order to live a peaceful, comfortable life without any work. It definitely starts off slow with just being a standard isekai, but if you give it a chance, you'll find that your cheeks will be hurting from how hard you'll be laughing at everything that the main character does. He's pretty strong, but nowhere near to being the strongest, so he has to make up for it somehow. And what he does have is the ability to con the shit out of you, and every time you'll be thanking him for it. Honestly, the main appeal of the manhwa is getting to see what face Lloyd will make next. No, literally, look at these panels. They're incredible. He has so much personality that it practically comes out of the screen. He has the most incredible banter with his bodyguard that I've ever seen. They insult each other with such dumb, low blows and savage personal attacks that I was befuddled and a little bit in awe of the character writing between these two. You can tell that the author was having a blast drawing this guy more and more as the series goes on. The artist is constantly trying to push how far he can make someone be an asshole, but still super likable. If you're looking for a great comedy, this one is for you. Have you ever read a story and thought to yourself, I wish that story was real? Our main character is Kim Dokja, a normal salaryman whose only defining trait is that he is the sole reader of a web novel called 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse. The day that the final chapter releases, Dokja gets a gift from the author of the web novel and the whole world is turned upside down as suddenly a mythical creature appears in the train that Dokja is in and starts a scenario. Kill a living being or die. The passengers hear screams and explosions happening outside as they all realize that the world is literally ending. They all start freaking out except for Kim Dokja. Why? It's because it's the first scenario of the story he was reading. It's ways to survive, and only he knows how to reach the ending of the story. His ending. I just want to start by saying that I have read the entire web novel for the story, and by God, it's fantastic. Genuinely, every level of the story is thought out. It has such an intriguing premise that it pretty much kickstarted 100 tropes that have spread throughout Korean web novels as a whole. For example, the constellation system where gods operate under aliases and grant powers to people that pique their interest. That was popularized here and maybe even started here. But the most interesting part of this story is that it is a story about stories. Not just about the story that Dokja was reading, but about stories in general. What does it mean to tell a story? Every aspect of Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint is designed to hammer that message home and answer those questions. Kim Dokja meets the characters from the novel and he realizes something. Even though they are exactly as described, even though they are exactly what he expected, they are somehow more. They evolve beyond words on a page, they become more than just black pixels on white. And Dokja comes to re-examine what it means to be reading this story. Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint makes you ask, how much weight does a story have? What stories are you driven by? What stories can you tell about others? What story will you leave behind? If you're interested in asking those questions, this is the story for you. Cha Hyun-soo is an orphan. His family all passed away in a tragic car accident and he's now the only one left. He moves to this apartment complex called Green Home where he plans for his eventual, well, yeah. But weird stuff has been happening lately. People all around him have been experiencing nosebleeds inexplicably. Their cell phones keep whining whenever anyone tries to use them. People hear voices. But whatever, he's just trying to enjoy the time that he has. He gets an Uber Eats and when the package finally arrives, it's ripped open, and a trail of food leads to his neighbor's room. Looks like someone has the munchies. He's annoyed and he goes to confront his neighbor. He opens the door to her room and sees a mess. There's open packets of chips and ramen everywhere, the remnants of half-eaten food littering the ground, and a bloody cat's collar. With no cat wearing it. Then, Cha Hyun-soo sees a monstrous hand reach out to grab the collar. He tries to slowly step back when he steps on an empty bag. He rushes back to his room and shuts the door and hides under his bed. His own racing heartbeat almost covers the sound of whatever was in that room slowly stalking his way to the door. And then you might have heard of this webtoon actually from the live-action Netflix adaptation, and I've just gotta say, the webtoon was better. It just is. This webtoon is one of the best I've ever read in creating suspense and genuine dread. The paneling is a masterclass in delivering slow movements and building tension agonizingly. I found myself genuinely shaking in terror when reading this story. A large part of that is because of the monsters. Each and every one is unique and quite horrifying to look at. Each one radiates imminent danger. There was not one moment while reading this webtoon when I saw a monster and my heart wasn't leaping out of my throat. And this story builds a tense plot and mystery. How did the monsters appear? How can they manage to escape the building? Each chapter builds upon these questions and threads begin to spread out to more questions than answers, and it's awesome getting to untangle that web. If you're looking for a good horror, then this one is for you. I think that I will save a full discussion of this manhwa for its own video. It just means a lot to me. I started reading this manhwa when it was only 20 chapters out, and when I finished those 20 chapters I thought, what the hell, and started reading the web novel. It was the first manhwa that got me to do so. And wow, it was beautiful. I don't say that lightly, it genuinely is beautiful. When I first started reading, I thought it would be your standard overpowered story where whenever the main character dies, he would respawn like Suburo, but instead this time he gets stronger every time. And for a few chapters it is. It only really begins to show its depth a few chapters in, and it's fantastic. The story bounces between so many different genres and ideas, and it somehow manages to deal with them all masterfully. One story arc, it becomes a Chinese martial arts story, and then the next, it becomes a villainous romance plot, and it doesn't skip a beat. In fact, I can't tell you which arc I like better. I think the best way to describe this manhwa is that it's written with sincerity. It approaches everything it talks about with the utmost respect. Bullying, starvation, guilt, expectations, all of it culminates into one story where you can't help but feel something. Is it pity? Maybe. Is it sympathy? Perhaps. Is it understanding? Definitely. The story is about understanding and the weight that comes with that. Now, I may be hyping it up to be this literary masterpiece. While I may think it is, probably a lot of you will not, and that's okay. You'll also get to see some really cool fights and really pretty art. You get to laugh at some funny shit like the main character hustling some fantasy races and tricking them into thinking he's essentially Jesus. It has something for everyone. If you want an all-around wonderful story, I could readily recommend this one to everyone that's watching this video. I love it, and I will make a dedicated video to it soon, but give it a shot. And that's it. Those are the 5 manhwa which I think would make great anime. If you guys have any more manhwa recommendations, feel free to throw them my way in the comments. And remember to stay kind, everyone. Peace.